The prophecy of blood and birth. In the heart of the mighty kingdom of Okarana, where red dust kissed the sun-baked earth and baobab trees whispered secrets older than time, a strange wind swept through the land. It carried with it the scent of salt and smoke, stirring whispers from the oldest stones and unsettling even the boldest warriors. The people of Okarana gathered at the great square, where the elder seeress Naya, bent and veiled, awaited beneath the ancient ironwood tree. Her sightless eyes shimmered with truth unseen. The sky above her burned a darker hue, and the birds had fled hours before. She opened her mouth, and her voice thundered despite her fragile frame. The throne shall break. The bloodline shall split. The child of kings will not be born of man. He shall come from both land and beast. And his cry will shake the bones of the world. Silence fell like a shroud. Women clutched their children. Warriors touched their blades. The king, obeyed the Tor, a warrior of 30 wars, frowned beneath his lining-greaved crown. Prophecies had always danced around Okarana, but never one that dared question the purity of the royal line. Yet the Queen Ayena the Gentle, whose beauty rivaled the moon and whose voice could calm fire, stepped forward. "Seeress," she asked, her voice trembling, "is the beast of which you speak an enemy, or a bearer?" Naya turned her head toward Ayena and smiled, a crooked, sorrowful thing. "You will know him by his eyes, and by your sin." A moonless night in the sacred forest. Weeks later, as whispers swelled like rising rivers, King Obed undertook the rite of renewal, a royal ritual held once a generation in the heart of the Karambi sacred forest, a place forbidden to all but the blood of kings. He was to fast, meditate, and offer his blood to the gods in silence for 7 nights. On the 7th night, a thunderstorm broke across the forest, though no rain fell. Ayena, alone in the palace, tossed and turned. Dreams plagued her, silver eyes in the dark, scales beneath her fingertips, whispers in a language not her own. When Obed returned, he was different, his eyes darker, his breath colder, though his lips smiled. That night, Ayena conceived. The birth approaches. 9 moons passed, and the kingdom watched Queen Ayena's belly swell. The elders worried in silence, the people lit incense and sacrificed goats, and Ayena grew quieter with each passing moon. As the day of birth neared, the kingdom held its breath. Warriors polished their spears with palm oil and ash. Herbalists sang over roots and stones. The elders, wrapped in leopard skins, began their fast under the iron sun, seeking protection from spirits they could not name. But Ayena's chambers were haunted by dread. Birds died on her windowsill. Wolves howled beneath her balcony. The unborn child kicked at midnight as if struggling against unseen chains. The day the earth wept. Ayena's labor began just before dawn. The sky turned a dull crimson, and the sun refused to rise. The midwives came, murmuring prayers. Outside, the city waited, drumbeats echoing softly like a heartbeat. She screamed once, long and guttural, and then silence. Then came the quake. The palace shook, stones cracked, and statues of ancestors toppled. In the courtyard, guards fell to their knees as 2 colossal serpents, scales black as starless nights, erupted from the earth. Their hissing roared louder than thunder. One serpent, eyes burning gold, crawled through the walls into the birthing chamber. The other struck outwards, biting and thrashing. Soldiers charged, but spears shattered against the scales. King Obed, sword drawn, roared and charged. He was beaten mid-stride. The serpent's choice. Ayena clutched her newborn, eyes wide with terror. But the serpent did not strike. Instead, it spoke, its voice deep, ancient, trembling the stone walls. "You broke the vow, Ayena of Okarana. But for love, I spare you. The child is ours." Ayena wept, shielding the baby. "Please, please don't take him. He is my son. He is." The serpent gently plucked the boy from her arms. The infant did not cry, but blinked, eyes glowing gold, like the serpent's. He is the one born of both flesh and fang. He belongs to both worlds. You were warned. Then, with a flash of light and stone and dust, the serpents vanished into the earth, leaving silence behind. The king lay dying. The child was gone. The palace was in ruins. Judgment. 3 days passed. King Obed's body was burned with 7 bulls and a lion. The people mourned, but their sorrow turned sharp, shaped by fear. The elders gathered beneath the council tree, arguing long into the night. Many accused Ayena of witchcraft, of consulting with spirits in the king's absence. She bore a beast child, one elder spat. She has cursed our land, cried another. But one among them, Elder Jemok, the oldest and most respected, raised his staff. We are blind with fear. She bore the child of prophecy. Not by choice, but by fate. Kill her, and the gods may abandon us forever. And so it was decided, Ayena would live, but not walk free. She was bound in golden chains and taken to the Tower of Dust, where only the wind and spirits visited. When the child returns, said Elder Jemok, so too shall her truth. And so it begins. Seasons turned. Okarana grew quiet, watchful. Rumors spread, of a child raised by serpents in the southern swamps, of a boy who could speak with wolves, command fire, and vanish like mist. Ayena, in her tower, whispered lullabies to the wind. And far beneath the earth, the boy with golden eyes grew, between fang and flesh, between prophecy and betrayal. For what no one yet knew was that the vow broken was not Ayena's alone. And the betrayal to come would spill more than blood. It would divide kingdoms. It would awaken gods. And it would all begin with a mother's love, the kingdom without a crown. The once glorious kingdom of Okarana, adorned with golden rooftops and gardens of cassia and flame lilies, slowly faded under the weight of silence and sorrow. Without a crown to guide its destiny, the throne stood cold in the hall of ancestors, veiled in black cloth, while the queen sat imprisoned in a tower, and her child, lost to legend, remained unseen. Whispers over the wind. 10 years passed like falling grains in a cracked god. Ayena, queen no more, sang only to herself. Her voice echoed against the stone walls of the Tower of Dust, where vines crept in and owls nested above her window. Though her face remained youthful, her eyes were heavy with shadows. She often placed her hand on the wall, as though feeling for a pulse beneath the stone, a heartbeat that once called her mother. Below, the kingdom stirred with unrest. The crops shriveled. Goats bore stillborns. Fishermen returned with empty nets and hollow eyes. The rains forgot their paths, and rivers shrank into slivers of cracked mud. The sun, once a golden friend, now scorched with cruel hunger. Children cried in the night, haunted by dreams of burning trees and hissing voices. The people of Okarana looked to the palace, and found only an empty throne. Cursed crowns. In desperation, the council of elders, led by the aging elder Jemok, appointed new kings. The first, Sulam of the Eastern Guard, was crowned under a blood moon. He lasted 3 days before vomiting black bile and collapsing during a feast. The second, Nego the Tall, was found strangled in his chambers, his eyes wide with terror and his crown clenched in his fist. The third, a boy of noble blood, vanished in his sleep, leaving behind only an imprint on the bed and a single golden serpent scale. The people began to whisper of a curse. Perhaps, they said, the throne rejects false kings. Others muttered, the true heir lives, and waits. Fear settled in their bones. Families fled. Markets emptied. The once lively festival of ancestors was cancelled for the first time in 7 generations. The heir of scales. Elder Jemok, now bent and coughing blood into his palm, gathered the elders beneath the moon circle. He wore his leopard robe and twisted gold rings, symbols of wisdom and weight. My brothers and sisters, he rasped, our ears must not be deaf to prophecy. King Obed's last words were not cries of pain. He said, the child, is the future. He said, do not crown another. And we have disobeyed. The elders bowed their heads in shame. But the child was taken, muttered Elder Kolo, his voice barely above the wind. How do we find one raised by beast? We remember where he vanished, Jamok replied, his eyes glowing faintly. The enchanted forest. A gasp. A murmur of fear. That name had not been spoken since the day of the quake. It was a place of death and shadows, where trees moved and rivers whispered secrets. It is forbidden, Elder Naima said firmly. Not even the spirits return from there. Jamok nodded slowly. And yet, without him, we die. The forbidden expedition. Weeks later, under a pale sun, 12 men and women, warriors, seers, trackers, set out from Okerana. They carried sacred herbs, ancestral charms, and blades dipped in serpent venom. The people watched them disappear into the forest mist. They never returned. Not a footprint. Not a scream. Not even a single torn cloth. Days later, a child found a carved horn on the forest edge. The villagers recognized it. It belonged to Gatekeeper Tuno, one of the strongest men in the land. Panic erupted. They meddle with dark spirits, one woman cried. They tried to steal back what the gods claimed, another shouted. The elders of Okerana were blamed for tempting the wrath of the forest. Stones were thrown at the council hall. One elder was burned in his own hut. Jamok survived an attempted poisoning, coughing harder now, his skin pale as clay. But Ayena, still imprisoned, heard the news through a servant's whisper. And she wept, not just for the deaths, but for the child she once held. Forgive me, she whispered to the wind, I did not know what love would cost. A kingdom's collapse. Famine took its toll. The ground cracked. Lakes dried. Women gave birth to lifeless babes. Entire villages were swallowed by dust storms. The royal scribe stopped recording events. They said even paper cried when it knew sorrow. Children asked their mothers, why is there no king? And their mothers answered, because we broke something that cannot be mended. Priests held prayers for 100 days. Drums beat until hands bled. Dancers collapsed from hunger mid-ritual. But the gods remained silent. Some fled the kingdom entirely. Others gathered outside Ayena's tower, demanding she be killed to lift the curse. She birthed the snake's child, they screamed. But Elder Jamok stood firm. If she dies, so too does our last chance. The forest below the forest. Deep in the enchanted forest, beneath layers of roots and vines, there was a realm untouched by time. Here lived the Ophidians, a people of scale and blood, half human, half serpent, creatures older than kingdoms, born when the earth first wept. And among them was the boy. He had no name, only titles. Child of scale, prince of venom, he who sleeps with snakes. His eyes were golden. His hair dark. His skin bore faint ridges along the arms, like scales, though soft as flesh. He spoke their tongue fluently. He could charm vipers, ride on the backs of black cobras, and read the sky's patterns through the rustling of leaves. But sometimes, late at night, he dreamed of a voice singing. A woman's voice. A lullaby in a language he did not understand. Who is she? He once asked. The others only hissed and warned him, never ask. The dying king. Far beneath the forest heart, on a bed of silver moss, lay the Serpent King, his massive coils curled like thunderclouds. His eyes, once bright as suns, now dulled with the weight of age and secrets. The boy approached him gently, placing a hand on the king's snout. Why do you sleep so much now? He asked. The Serpent King's breath rasped like sliding stones. Because time is greedy, child. And I have lived long enough to see promises break. Will you die? The boy asked, his golden eyes wide. The Serpent King raised his great head, looking deep into the boy's soul. I must. But before I do, you must promise me something. Anything. The great serpent exhaled smoke. You must never seek the word of men. You must never ask who you were. You must never learn that you were once human. The boy blinked. I am not. You are ours, the Serpent King said. You were always meant to be ours. But deep within, the boy felt something shift, like a door creaking open in the dark. He did not speak again that night. And the Serpent King, once ruler of all who slithered and whispered, began his final sleep. The cracks of fate. Back in Okarana, Elder Jemok stood before the hollowed throne, coughing blood into his robe. He held a final meeting. I am dying, he said plainly. And so is the kingdom. If we do not restore the crown to the heir of prophecy, we will all become dust. But how do we find him now? Elder Kolo asked. We cannot, Jemok replied, staring into the brazier's flames. But he will find us. How? Jemok closed his eyes. Because fate, like fire, always returns to what once burned. The Snake King's throne. In the realm beneath roots and shadow, where sandalwood glades hid ancient magic and serpents slithered with silent reverence, Prince Zimani reigned. They called him Voice of the Vines, he who hears the hiss, blood of the king, and the living bridge between the worlds of flesh and fawn. His skin shimmered under torchlight. His steps made cobras bow. His command could silence 1,000 serpents mid-hiss. But inside him, something stirred, a silent ache, like a song half remembered. He was not like them. The prince among scales. The Serpent Kingdom thrived under Zimani's guidance. Waterfalls flowed again. Sacred groves blossomed. The great nest of cobras bore its largest clutch in 2 centuries. Elders praised Zimani's wisdom, his fairness, his strange gift for speaking emotions aloud in a way no serpent ever had. But with every festival, every hunt, every sermon from the old snake priestesses, Zimani felt farther from himself. He had no mate. No offspring. No true siblings. Why, he asked one evening, beneath the moon vine, a sacred plant that only bloomed when secrets were near. An elder python cowed beside him, eyes like cloudy glass. Because you are sacred, she hissed. The last wish of the Serpent King. Sacred ones do not mate. They belong to destiny, not desire. Zimani nodded. But his heart rebelled. A love he could never touch. By day, he trained younger serpents in stealth and speech. By night, he wandered, silent, cloaked, unseen. He watched the family dens of snakes. He saw mothers curling around their young, singing in slow rumbles. He watched lovers dance beneath moss and moonlight, their scales gleaming in the wet earth. He listened to lullabies. And he felt the emptiness of never being held. One dusk, he followed the rustle of wings and stumbled upon a village, one he had never seen before, at the edge of the forest. Human huts. Smoke rising. Children playing. And music, drums and ululations that made something ancient in his chest ache. Zimani climbed a tree and watched. A wedding. A man and woman danced, adorned in beads and golden paint. The people clapped, sang, threw petals. Laughter filled the air like wind through reeds. He watched until dawn, tears he didn't understand wetting his cheeks. Whispers of a forgotten song. That night, Zimani dreamed. A woman sat behind iron bars, her hair matted but her eyes glowing like the full moon. She was singing, a haunting lullaby in a language he could not name, but understood in his bones. She pressed her hand to stone, and whispered, "Where are you, my child? My only, my lost one." He woke gasping. He sat beside the underground lake, touching his reflection. "Who am I?" he whispered. "What am I?" And for the first time, the lake offered no answer. The meeting. He left the serpent realm. Not in anger. Not in betrayal. But in search. Wrapped in old back-woven cloaks and with a serpent tooth around his neck, Zimani wandered until the tree stained and the earth cracked beneath his feet. He found a hunter, alone, limping, his bow broken, muttering prayers to the sun. Zimani approached with caution, speaking in the tongue of men, one he had never been taught, but somehow knew. The hunter froze, eyes wide. "Are you, spirit or man?" Zimani smiled softly. "Perhaps both." The hunter, sensing no harm, offered roasted nuts and dried okra. They sat in silence for hours before Zimani asked, "What happened to the kingdom near the Serpent Woods?" The hunter's eyes grew misty. "Ocarana." Zimani nodded. The name felt familiar, like a riverbed under dust. "The truth of the crownless kingdom." The hunter spoke slowly, each word laced with sorrow. He told of King Obed, wise and mighty. Of Queen Ayena, fierce and beautiful. Of a child born under a burning moon, and a forest that cracked open to steal him. He spoke of famine. Of cursed kings. Of a throne too afraid to be touched. And of a queen, now imprisoned for a decade, still whispering to her child in her sleep. Zimani felt as though the trees were spinning. "The child," he said. "The one stolen." The hunter nodded. "Taken by the snakes. Lost forever." Zimani's hand trembled. He reached for the serpent tooth around his neck, and saw it shimmer gold in the light. "I am that child," he whispered. "I am not of snakes. I was stolen." The wind fell silent. Storm in the veins. Zimani stood, staggering. He saw flashes, dreams that were not dreams. A woman's hand on his tiny foot. A laugh that sounded like bells. A snake's tongue hissing over a crying baby. His body reeled. All the words spoken to him, the lies cloaked as prophecy. "You must never learn you were once human. You were always meant to be ours." Zimani fell to his knees. Why would they lie? But deep inside, he already knew. Because to know his truth would break their hold. Because to belong elsewhere would fracture their throne. Because the Snake King's dying wish was not for the kingdom, but for control. The beginning of the return. Zimani turned to the hunter. "Take me to Ocarana." The hunter hesitated. "The path is cast." "I know," Zimani said. "But so is silence." He shed his serpent cloak, revealing skin that bore both scale and scar, evidence of both bloodlines. The hunter bowed low, sensing greatness. "Then may the gods walk with you, child of two worlds." As they vanished into the trees, a single cobra watched from a branch. And slithered back into the darkness. Return of the Forgotten Son. The night before his departure, Zimani knelt beside the Serpent King's stone bed, where moss grew like veins and incense burned in silence. The serpent, once mighty, now lay in coils faded and thin, his breath rattling like a cracked rattle drum. His eyes, no longer glowing, blinked slowly as if every moment was borrowed. "You will leave us," the king rasped. Zimani said nothing. "We raised you. Taught you the ancient tongues. You were born to lead us, not them." The prince clenched his fist. "Was I born to you, or stolen?" The Serpent King hissed in pain, coughing. "There was a reason. Your mother, she made a vow. She broke it. I wanted to protect me." Zimani growled. "Or protect your legacy." The old serpent wheezed, a final breath catching in his throat. "You must know, before you go, you are. But the words never came. His body went still. Zimani stood, his heart filled not with hate, but a strange, broken mercy. Journey through the wounded wild. Zimani and the hunter, Ijo was his name, departed at dawn. With only a spear, dried roots, and a single carved talisman from the Serpent Kingdom, they descended into the unspoken paths of the forgotten wild. The woods hissed with mischief. They crossed rivers where the water ran uphill, avoided trees that bled when touched, and outpaced shadow beasts, creatures born of grief and night. At the edge of a valley, they met a woman whose tears turned to snakes. She begged them to turn back. Zimani placed a hand on her shoulder. I was raised by what you fear. But I do not fear what I must reclaim. Her snakes vanished. The path opened. The king returns. At sunset on the seventh day, the red hills of Okarana rose before them like sleeping lions. Zimani paused beneath the ancient baobab, the first tree planted by the kingdom's founder. He placed his hand on its bark, and it paused warm beneath his fingers, a welcome. A memory. A heartbeat. The people in the village square were quiet, gathered for the rationing of what little food remained. The priest had just announced another failed harvest. Faces were gaunt, children listless. Suddenly, the watchtower bell rang. They looked up. A man, no, a figure, stood tall on the crumbling watchtower, cloaked in black, hair wild, skin glowing in the dying sun. His eyes shimmered gold with serpentine light. And then his voice broke the silence. People of Okarana, I am the child lost to the forest. I am your prince. Your king. I have returned. Gasps. Sobs. Some elders fainted. A boy dropped his drum. A woman fell to her knees. Many wept openly, for they had seen him in visions, in dreams. Some screamed, for his eyes bore the mark of the serpent gods. And yet, none turned away. The queen is freed. The guards rushed to the prison chambers. Inside, Queen Ayena sat still as a mountain, braiding dried grass into spirals, something she had done each day for years, waiting. She looked up as they entered, their faces pale. You are free, one whispered. Your son has returned, said another. She dropped the grass. At first, she did not move, like her bones had turned to stone. Then her body rose slowly, trembling, her hands clutching the wall as if afraid it would vanish. She stepped outside, eyes squinting into the light for the first time in years. There he stood. Zimani. Taller than she imagined. Wilder. Yet unmistakably hers. He turned. Mother. She ran to him. No words were spoken, just an embrace so tight, it seemed even the sky hushed to witness it. Her hands cupped his face. She searched every line, every scar, every sign that he was real. My baby, you are alive. You are whole. Tears fell. Not from sadness, but from the sudden weight of years lost, finally felt. But not yet peace. That night, the fires blazed. Drums beat again. The people danced, slowly at first, as if unsure they were allowed to feel joy. Food was shared. Songs were sung. The elders gathered in secret, arguing about what this return meant. Zimani stood beside his mother at the palace gates. He turned to the crowd. I am glad to be home. Glad to see my people still have fire in their spirits. The crowd cheered. But then, his voice changed, hardening like stone. But do not rejoice too quickly. The snakes are not done. The fires dimmed. He looked to the mountains beyond the woods, where a faint hissing wind began to rise. They raised me. Lied to me. Loved me in their own way. But they will not let me go so easily. The Serpent Kingdom is stirring. And if war must come, it will not be of my choosing. A silence fell. Then Ayena stepped forward, placing her hand over his heart. Then we will not let you stand alone, my son. You return not only to reclaim your place, but to fulfill the prophecy. From both land and beast, the king shall rise. And for the first time in generations, hope rose with the moon, the rise of the betrayals. The coronation of Zimani, son of two worlds, was unlike any seen before. The golden crown, shaped like a coiled serpent biting its own tail, was placed upon his head as Ayena stood beside him, her hand trembling on the scepter. Drums thundered. Incense rose in thick clouds. The people cheered, but not all did. In the shadows of the marble hall, cloaked in silence, a circle of elders exchanged grim glances. "He is not one of us," one muttered. "He was raised by beasts," said another. "He brings snakes into our courts. And worst of all," one voice whispered, "he is the prophecy fulfilled, but not the way we wanted." The poison in the bloodline. That night, as fireflies danced over the sacred lake, Ayena summoned her son into the inner chamber of the palace. He found her kneeling beside a locked chest. Her eyes glistened with memories she never dared speak aloud. "Before your father," she said quietly, "there was another." Zimani froze. A traveler. A man who was not a man. He came in dreams first, then in flesh. "I was young. Foolish. I thought it was love." She opened the chest and removed a piece of serpent scale, black, glossy, and warm to the touch. He was one of them. A shapeshifter. Sent to seduce the royal bloodline. I was not the only one. Many royal women, across the realm, bore children with secrets in their veins. Zimani's eyes widened. "So I was always meant to be this. A bridge between their world and ours." Ayena shook her head. "You were not meant. You were chosen. And now you must choose what to become." The betrayers within. In the days that followed, whispers became thunder. The serpent court, long thought dissolved, had never left. They had simply changed form. High-ranking nobles, advisors, even temple priests. All had blood ties to the serpent line, married into human families across generations, slowly climbing power's ladder. Their goal was never to wage war from outside. It was to rule from within. Zimani confronted the council of elders. "Lies have festered in this palace. You feared the serpents in the forest, but never questioned the ones in your courts." He looked each one in the eye. Some flinched. Some stood tall. One sneered openly. "Do you think you can rule both snake and man without being devoured by either?" Zimani drew his blade, a hilt of bone, a serpent's form for a tip. "I am the storm between worlds. I do not beg for loyalty. I command it." Preparing for war. The serpent cult struck first, poisoning wells, burning grain stores, and turning villagers against one another with whispers of doubt. One night, a young boy was found with scales on his back. His parents were stunned. Zimani stopped the violence with his presence alone, standing between the mob and the child, bearing his own serpent eyes. "If you hate him, hate me too. But know this, our enemy hides in fear, not in blood." He knew the kingdom could not stand alone. And so, he returned to the forest. There, beneath the old stone arch of the serpent court, he summoned his brethren with a sound only they could hear, a hissliad in sorrow and hope. One by one, they came. Snakes of the earth, of water, of fire. They bowed before him, but not all were eager. "You left us, a forest serpent's path. You chose man. Why should we die for your new throne?" Zimani stood firm. "Because I offer you something neither word ever did, truth. A place in the sun. A home not hidden. A bond not broken." He removed the golden crown and placed it on the earth between them. "Not above you. Not below. With you." A pause. Then the eldest serpent slithered forward, coiling gently around the crown. "Then let our fangs strike as one." The eve of war. Drums beat like heartbeats through the city. Families wept. Warriors sharpened blades and painted their faces in ash and oil. Zimani stood before the people. His armor shimmered with scales and cloth. His hair was bound in royal knots. His voice, when it rose, felt like thunder and wind in one breath. They tried to conquer us with lies. Now they rise with venom. But I am not your savior. I am not your beast. I am your king. The villagers raised their weapons. The serpents coiled through the streets, not to harm, but to protect. A new alliance was born, not out of trust, but necessity. Not out of tradition, but truth. Ayena stood behind her son, hand over her heart. He was taken from me. Raised in lies. But he returned with truth. And now, we rise together. As dawn broke, the horizon glowed red, not from the sun, but from the fires of the serpent cult, marching from the inner woods, cloaked in black and silver. The final war was near. And as Zimani stepped onto the battlefield, the prophecy whispered once more in the wind. From land and beast, he rose. From blood and vow, he fights. The king who breaks the serpent's chain shall write the world anew. The crown between two worlds. The sun never rose the day war began. Instead, the sky wept fire. Ash fell like snow as the ground trembled beneath marching feet and slithering bodies. The betrayers came draped in serpent skin, eyes glowing with forbidden power. From their mouths, chants twisted the air, summoning magic older than language, a magic born of deception and blood. And waiting for them atop the obsidian hill stood Zimani. Crowned in gold and serpent scale armor, he looked not like a man, nor a snake, but something more. Behind him stood villagers armed with spears, bows, and courage. Beside him, forest serpents coiled and hissed, ready to strike for the king who gave them purpose. This day, Zimani said, we are not enemies. This day, we fight not for kingdoms, but for truth. For the child stolen. For the queen silenced. For the hearts that loved across impossible lines. The final battle began. The sky cracks open. The serpent cult raised staffs carved with bones. Thunder clapped, not from clouds, but from spells cast across generations. Great serpent illusions rose from the earth, hissing fire. Zimani and his people fought fiercely. Steel met foam. Flesh met flame. The line between human and beast vanished in the chaos. And then, the cry pierced the battlefield. Zimani turned. Ayena, his mother, his light, had taken an arrow meant for him. She fell, arms outstretched, blood blooming on her robes like a final flower. He ran to her, dropping his sword. No, he breathed, cradling her head. Stay. Please stay. Her hand rose slowly, trembling, and touched his serpent-marked cheek. You were born of love, she whispered, breath shallow. Not deception. Never deception. Rule as both man and serpent. Heal this world. Heal. Her hand fell. Zimani's scream echoed across the land. Warriors and snakes alike paused. The ground itself seemed to grieve. The birth of a new magic. Zimani stood, eyes burning, not with rage, but clarity. He pressed his bloodied hand to the ground and whispered a language that had never been spoken aloud before. It was not serpent speech, nor human tongue. It was both. A new language. A bridge. The earth responded. From the soil rose green flames, not of destruction, but of healing. The flames danced between villagers and snakes, binding their spirits, giving strength, uniting wounds with memories. The betrayers tried to counter, but their magic, rooted in lies, shattered in the presence of truth. One by one, the cult fell. Some vanished in smoke. Others fled, weeping. A few dropped their weapons and bowed. Zimani spared those who surrendered. You wore masks for so long, he said, you forgot the shape of your own souls. I will not kill what can still be redeemed. The new kingdom. Days later, the fires were put out. The palace was rebuilt, not as a fortress, but as a meeting ground. Zimani created a council of both human and serpent advisors. Forest snakes slithered through the market. Children played beneath the shade of serpent-guarded trees. The village and the forest became one. A path of stone and vine was laid between them, a road walked daily by those who once feared each other. Zimani ruled without fear, and without forcing either world to surrender. He was not the human king. He was not the serpent heir. He was Zimani the bridge, the healer, the truth bearer. His crown, remade, no longer bore a coiled snake, but an open circle of gold and green crystal, symbolizing unity. The final words. And so the tale passed into legend, carried by griots and grandmothers, sung beside fires and whispered beneath trees. They say, the greatest kings are not those born perfect, but those who heal what was once broken. They say, he was the boy who never chose to be taken, but he became the man who chose to return. They say, when the crown sat between two worlds, he made it fit both heads. And if you walk far enough into the forest where the stone path fades, you might hear the snake still hissing in peace, and the wind carrying the sound of a mother's lullaby, once lost, now returned. The end.